Alright, Masters of the Universe Classics fans, Scott Toy Guru Nightlick here with another video on an inside look at what was happening behind the scenes with the He-Man and the Masters of the Universe Classics line from Mattel, available on Matty Collector until there was no Matty Collector. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the figures that never made it into the line. Now, I'll be completely honest. A lot of these figures are my personal choice. These are figures that I couldn't get into the line, or at least I wanted to see in the line that never made it for one reason or another. And the reasons vary from cost to the fact that I left Mattel and the line kind of fell apart after that, to the fact that some of these characters weren't ones that fans were asking for, and I wasn't going to force them into the line just because I wanted them. Believe it or not, I wasn't this evil monarch. I did respect what fans were asking for as much as humanly possible. So here we go. In no particular order, these are some of the figures that I would have loved to personally see in the line. Alright, so first up, the mini-comics were basically the dumping ground for characters that we couldn't get into the line. A lot of the characters that showed up in the mini-comics were the ones that I would have liked to see in the line that we couldn't quite get there. And one of them was actually proposed and was on the 2016 line list, which was going to be a Prince Keldor and Prince Randor 2-pack from Comic-Con. You may remember in 2016 there was no Comic-Con item. That was the year I left Mattel, and the team never carried forward with these ideas. So I really loved the idea of kind of a Clone Wars Anakin Obi-Wan style version of Randor and Keldor, when, before Keldor turned evil, before Anakin became Darth Vader, they were fighting side by side in the Great Wars against Count Marzo. And that was a big reason I put them in the mini-comics, because I really liked that moment in MOTUC lore. I thought it was really strong. I thought it was a very cool look. Keldor was very deliberately put in yellow because it was the opposite of the purple that he would wear later from a color standpoint, as well as green. So, unfortunately never happened. And the world had to live without a Keldor and Prince Randor 2-pack at Comic-Con. Sad. Sad panda. Next up, Songster. A character tried so hard to get into the line. We put him on the fans' choice list. We put him in the mini-comic. We did a lot to try to get him into the line, and it just never happened. In fact, we even contacted the actor that played Songster, or rather the musician that played Songster, in the Power Tour. And we asked him if he would promote the idea of getting him in the line, and he said he wouldn't do it unless we paid him a lot of money. So, unfortunately, we couldn't do that. Alright, so for all the shellac I got for creating Mighty Spectre and people saying I couldn't create original characters, despite the fact that I still love him, and many fans still do, I got a lot of praise for creating Lady Slither. She was basically created because I felt there needed to be a female Snake Man, or Snake Woman, if you will. So the idea was that the unnamed one was plopping down these snake lords on different planets. King Hiss was the one on Eternia, and Lady Slither was the one on Tralla, and she could transform her bottom half into a snake, and she was really cool and visually awesome. Tried to get her into the line, but just a bridge too far. Alright, so this one needs just a slight explanation. There was a vintage mini-comic where He-Man was having a tug-of-war with all of the heroic warriors, and the guy on the far left there in the yellow jacket was... Who the heck was that? I mean, everyone else was recognizable. You saw Teela and you saw Man-at-Arms there, but who in the world was this guy in the yellow shirt at the end of the tug-of-war? Totally unknown character who seemed to show up in the vintage mini-comics. And let's just say he became so popular that fans were even making their own version of him as a toy. So honestly, this was exactly what Classics was all about, and wanted to find a cool way to get him into the line. And again, as I said in the beginning of the video, I used the mini comics to really plop in the characters that I would have liked to see in the line that couldn't get there. And we plopped in Tug of War as a cosmic deity that always showed up to sort of add his strength at the last minute, which kind of paid homage to what he did in the mini comic in the vintage era. In the MOTUC Classics mini comic, he was kind of the Deus Ex Machina who took Eternia and put it back together after it was destroyed by the unnamed one, or at least broken in half in the previous mini comic. And then he's like, I'm leaving and you'll never see me again. So yeah, and we even got Axel to do some art for him. He was cool. Never happened. Alright, so despite fan rumors to the contrary, I tried so hard to get Alumina into the line. She was a character that was created by the MVC comic crew, which was headed by Val Staples and Emiliano back in like sort of the 2000X era. And she only made one appearance. She showed up in an ad for an unmade comic. So that was all we had to go off of. We had no other backstory to her. And since fans for some reason thought I was trying to prevent her from being in the line, I thought it'd be great to put her in the mini comic actually being the one to kill Mighty Spectre, my character, from the line, to sort of symbolize this sort of fan-created conflict that wasn't actually true. And because we didn't have any story to her, based on the art alone, which is all we had, which was her and this the feline, we had the idea that she would turn into the feline, and that would be her other form. And that was going to be a cool way to get into her line. And we put her in the fan pick contest to pick a figure, and we had her in a lot of different ways, but she just never made it. Alright, so Shira had a definite role in the mythos, but once roles were evolving and she found herself on Eternia, and Man-at-Arms was turned into a snake and then unfortunately died in Tila's arms, I thought it would be a really cool idea to have Shira take over that role visually and literally, and she was going to be Shira at Arms, which would have been an awesome variant of her, where we kind of put Man-at-Arms armor and colors on Shira, and it would have been a really, really interesting take on her and a new visual for Shira. But again, just never made it into the line, but stuck it into the mini comics nonetheless. King Miro. So here's a character that goes all the way back to Filmation, but we use the 2000X version in the mini comic. He was Randor's father, so He-Man's grandfather, and yeah, I mean, he really should have been in the line. Tried a bunch of times to get him in there, and it just never quite fit. And again, that's why we put him into the mini comics and tried to use him in that capacity. But for, again, one reason or another, he just never made it. And, fans definitely liked him. I mean, fan art would show up on the internet of what he would look like. So, alas, didn't make it. Alright, well, love him or hate him, Skeleton was definitely a figure we wanted to try to get to in the line, and he featured very prominently in the mini-comics, both on his own and as a member of the Unnamed Ones band. We even had this amazing flash forward in an early mini-comic that actually paid off and happened in a later one, which honestly was one of the coolest things I think we ever did. He was absolutely based on a vintage concept. This was shown at Comic-Con one year. He was meant to be Skeletor and Eva Lynn's son, and unfortunately we just never got to getting to him in the line. I love Skelecons. They are awesome. I really like the idea that each faction had kind of a nameless army. And yes, I know Skeletor got his robots, but these were from the Lady Bird books, and they were awesome. They were just so cool visually. And we did get one out with the Roton, but the plan was to also do a single-carded release, sort of at the same time, because we knew fans were going to want to army build him. And the idea of only being able to get an army building character with a vehicle was ridiculous. But again, like a lot of things, after I left Mattel, plans fell apart because there was no one to take my place. We'll get more into that in a different video. But we did stick them into the mini comics, and we deliberately did winged and non-winged versions because the idea was the non-winged one was going to come with the Roton, and then the winged one was going to be a single figure. But you could pull the wings out, so that way you could customize it. And again, yeah, the single carded release with the wings didn't happen. Fans did do custom versions, and that's kind of maybe what it would have looked like. Oh well, sad. I really would have liked an army of these guys, and I didn't want to buy a bunch of Roton. Alright, last up on my personal list is Aramesh. Yep, Aramesh from Filmation. What can I say? I am a big fan of robots. I thought he was awesome being a robot with a cape. You just don't see that often. I thought he had a really cool visual, really cool powers. Unfortunately, he just wasn't a character fans asked for that much, or at least early in the line. I didn't want to force him into the line. I wanted to get to the Filmation characters people really wanted, like Voltac and Lord Mask. He did show up, eventually on some fan lists, but that really wasn't until the very, very end of the line. And, I just didn't think it was fair to put my personal choice in there when no one was really asking. Here's kind of a fan custom I found online. Maybe this is what he would have looked like. I wish we could have done him. Oh well. So that is it for my personal list, but in no means is that meant to be all-inclusive. That's just literally my personal feelings. There's a ton of other characters that deserve to be in the line, that could have been in the line, I would have liked to see in the line beyond just these. And, that includes characters like Bandwidth, who was the background character named after other Mattel employees' inability to want to help out and not have quote-unquote bandwidth to help you. It included characters like the Sorceress in her Jedi robes, or Tila as a Sorceress. It included Robo-Woman. It included Keldor before he becomes Skeletor. It included, Old Man Beastman and all of those guys. So, yeah, let me know, who I missed. Who were your personal figures that didn't make it into line? Again, this was not meant to be all-inclusive. This is just sort of my personal take. And please, please do share this video. I'm not doing Patreon or anything like that. I just want to get the word out that these videos exist. So if you can share it on social media, and hey, subscribing would be awesome too. Because, YouTube is a tug-of-war, and no one wants to play that game. Thanks, guys.